Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now here's your host, who measures success in both ticket sales and social media impressions, Sean Callanan.
G'day, my name is Sean Callanan, and welcome to episode 412 of Sports Geek. This week I chat with Bobbie Walker. He's the Associate Athletic Director of Ticket Operations at San Diego State University. I really do appreciate you listening to the podcast. What I want to know is, where do you listen? Do you listen on Apple? Do you listen on Spotify? Do you listen on Pocket Casts? Or do you listen now on our YouTube channel? I'd love to hear from you. I still listen to everything via Pocket Cast, but I'd love to hear where you're listening. And I really do appreciate you listening. You can find all the episodes at sportsgeekhq.com, where you can find all the episodes and also learn about the work that we do using the digital to dollars process to help sports teams and leagues commercialize what they're doing in the digital space. That's what we love to do. As always, you can reach me via social media at Sean Callanan on most digital platforms. You can send me a DM there, whether it be on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram. But you can also get me the old-fashioned way, sending me an email, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. I love hearing from podcast listeners, and one of the things I do love doing is working with podcast listeners. So if there's a way that I can help you, please reach out. Tickets, as we know, are the lifeblood of sports, and that's why I invited Bobbie Walker on the podcast. If you need to get cheeks on the seats, then this is an episode for you. Please enjoy my chat with Bobbie Walker from San Diego State University. Very happy to welcome Bobbie Walker. He's the Associate Athletic Director of Ticket Operations at San Diego State University, also known as SDSU. Bobbie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Really do appreciate it. I always start my podcasts and my conversations in trying to find people's sports biz origin story. What about yourself? How did you get your start in the world of sports?
Yeah, a long time ago. So actually got started. Originally, I wanted to get into sports medicine. So went to the University of Utah, was going to go to med school to be a sports doc, and decided I didn't want to continue that route, working in a hospital, wanted to be more on the business side. And from there, found the master's program at the University of San Francisco, moved out there to get my master's in sports management and marketing back in 1998. And as I was starting my master's program, was living in Sacramento, and at the time the Kings were starting. Back in the day, back in the early 90s, is when sports teams started opening up inside sales, so telemarketing departments. Brand new concept of these inside sales departments that teams were starting, and I went there to see about like an internship. Hey, I'm getting my master's. And they said, hey, we're starting this inside sales department. We were literally in a banquet room at the Sacramento Kings Stadium, Arco Arena at the time, and just smiling and dialing, making phone calls, and trying to sell Kings tickets. And what happened is the guy that was managing the department was getting his real estate license, and once he got that, he bailed on us, and I basically stepped up and said, hey, I'll pitch in and take care of these guys until you guys find a replacement. And like a month later, they said, hey, you're crushing it. You want the job. So moved up the ladder there, spent 5 years with the Sacramento Kings from 1999, when the Maloofs bought the team back then, until the end of 2004. Moved back to Utah to kind of raise the family with my wife and kids, and started working. At that time, the owner of the Utah Jazz purchased the minor league baseball team, is the AAA affiliate of the Angels. and they said, hey, do you want to help kind of run ticketing for this minor league AAA baseball team? Did that for 3 seasons, and then was promoted to director of sales for the Utah Jazz. Did that from 2007 to 2014.
And so, I mean, so for all these roles, I mean, jumping in that ticket sales, was it just something that you found just hit your skill set perfectly? Because like you said, the inside sales was new, but it's obviously, a lot of people on the podcast have said that's how I started. I started on inside sales, started to understand the business, and then they either moved to different areas. Did you just find that ticket sales and managing ticket sales teams was something that, one, you're exceptionally good at, but also something that you were always been able to move the needle on?
Yeah. I never went into it thinking I would be in sales, but it is a great place to start because there's so many positions in sales. Teams are always looking. A lot of people getting into sports, they're thinking, well, I want to do marketing or something cool. And they don't think about like I want to sit there and do the daily grind of sales. But it is a great way to get into an organization. And in minor league sports, I was doing everything from being a mascot to selling sponsorships to running a box office. You kind of get to do a little bit of everything to kind of find your niche. And, I really succeeded in sales, especially management, more than the sales side of it, managing salespeople, managing different personalities, and getting them to be successful. Really, really was something I enjoyed. And eventually I went, after 7 years as director of sales, was promoted to vice president of ticketing and overseeing more of the operations side.
Okay.
And the owners of the Jazz own the Delta Center, many names, but so we ran from an operations standpoint. I oversaw like all of the concerts, Disney on Ice, the Utah Jazz, the Salt Lake Bees. So it was running the ticket operations side for what was called Larry H. Miller Sports Entertainment at the time. And
so with that, I mean, ticket sales, obviously, you've just quickly skimmed past a 20-year career in multiple places, but ticketing has that. There would have been times like when you're at the Kings and they had Vlade Divac and Chris Webber, and they were a hot ticket in town, and the Jazz at certain times would have had teams that were the hot ticket in town, but then also you'd have those teams that were real struggle and were real slog. How do you, I guess, smooth that out for your sales team and really sell the experience, but also take advantage when the product on the floor is really ramping up the demand?
Yeah, that's interesting. It is. Yeah, I've went through my career. I've been with the Kings where we were sold out and we had 10,000 people on a waiting list at the time, and to years where we couldn't give away tickets, to be able to adapt and to adjust is a huge part of the sports business, the ebbs and flows of the sports team, and when your phone's ringing off the hook for people to buy tickets, and then where you go to a year or two where no one will answer your call. So you've got to be able to adapt. There's different concepts and ideas. When I was with the Jazz and we had some down years, we were focused on the visiting team. Come out and check out the Lakers are in town. You have to kind of sell the visiting team, or adjust and focus more on groups where it's less about like the what's going on the court or on the field. It's the same thing in minor league sports. In baseball, people go to the games and they leave the game and they don't even know who won or lost. It's not about the record. It's about the experience, and being able to kind of focus on that. So yeah, great question. It's just, you got to be able to adapt, and know that it's not always going to be this way. If you're at the highs of highs, you got to prepare for the years that you're going to be in the lows, and vice versa.
And is your effectively your playbook getting thicker and thicker every year to go, oh yeah, this worked in 2008 when we were on a tear, and this is what we did, or, this is what we did in a down year where we did the, like you said, the bundling of here's the premium team that we know is a hot ticket, but we're going to put them with two other games to get them, to fill the venues in those low periods. Are you still sort of going back into your playbook and saying, well, this worked in 2006 or this worked in 2014, we could run it back?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the concepts still work to this day. It's just how we deliver it. A lot of things has went through technology. You're no longer, doing group tickets where you're printing out stacks of tickets and going out in the community like we used to do 20 years ago, which is a benefit. We have the tools and the technology to be able to do the same concepts, but kind of in a more streamlined technological way that is more effective and efficient. So it's definitely you have to go back into your experience of how you handled those things and apply them, as you go through your career.
And then as you were at that ticketing operation level across the Miller Sports Group, and you did have multiple sports properties, but then, like you said, concerts, other entertainment pieces. Was that again a bit of a new learning experience to go, I know how to sell a basketball product, I know how to sell a minor league baseball product and how that is different, but then, completely new audiences, completely new demographics, and in some instances a completely different, ticket sales cycle for those concerts. Was that something that, one, you had to learn, but then also train your teams to be able to have that mental switch of selling a Utah Jazz ticket to selling a country music star concert is a completely different proposition?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we adapted to that, really where it became kind of a crossover is with groups, because when you're working with a company that's bringing out their employees for a Jazz game, they also have employees that maybe have kids that want to go to Disney on Ice. And so you're going back to the same groups in the same companies that you're like, hey, you did a 200 person group for a Jazz game for your Christmas party. What about going out to your employees and seeing if they want to come out to Disney on Ice? We're doing a Feld run. So there's a lot of crossover, and it actually makes you as a salesperson to be able to offer to your groups and your companies more than just one product. You can say, hey, I've got baseball in the summer, I got basketball in the fall and the winter, I sprinkle in, the Globetrotters and Disney on Ice and monster truck shows. And you can give kind of a full package of sports entertainment to the groups that you work with and the season ticket holders, the sponsors, all of those. So it makes you an even better resource for your group leaders when you have more than just one product to offer. And that's helped me in the sense of I made the transition during the pandemic to San Diego State. And so I spent a bulk 20 plus years in the NBA in the professional side and going over and making that transition to the collegiate sports where, we have 6 ticketed sports. So we've got, not only football, but we've got men's and women's basketball, we've got volleyball, baseball, softball. So it's a year round. We're selling, we've got 6 baseball games this weekend, and we have a basketball game on Tuesday. So it's like that ability to, be a year-round kind of selling cycle and entertainment opportunities is kind of correlated when I moved to the collegiate side of things here at San Diego State.
Absolutely, I wanted to get to SDSU. But I think one of the things I sort of taken away, and it's been a big discussion point at conferences like SEAT that we both attend and the conversations, but like all of those things you're talking about only happen if you secure the data and the data is verified and you can start having those conversations. If you sort of look back into your early years and someone probably printed things on a dot matrix printer, just landed them on your desk and you were just literally crossing off numbers as you call them. How has the I guess, the data position and the information at your fingertips from a ticketing and a sales point of view changed over the last 25 years?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the one thing that has helped me go from an inside sales rep to a vice president of a professional organization is I embrace technology and change. I don't like the stagnant. That's why I like sports entertainment. Every day I come to work, I'm doing something different than what I did yesterday. And that's what I think drives a lot of us in this is if you don't like change, this business is going to drive you crazy. And so technology was a big piece of that. I felt like I've always been at the forefront of technology and ticketing. That's why I attend, the conferences like Seat conferences, so I can be at the forefront of what's coming up next, And throughout my career, you're right. Like when I started in inside sales, we literally, what we were calling from is you would go to a sales table and they'd have a card and you'd fill out to enter to win, and you'd put your information, and then the cards would go into this box and they would send a box up to us, and you'd literally grab this and you would call the person, and the guy sitting next to you would grab one. Well, as most people do, they fill out 5 of these to increase their chance. So this person grabs a card with the same information and calls and says, "Hey, I got somebody on the other line, and it's the guy next to me calling." That's and when we sold stuff, it was literally a printed sheet of paper that said these are the locations available, and you put a little pin on there. So that's what we were dealing with, and in printing tickets and mailing tickets and all of the costs associated to that. But I think one of the biggest challenges we all went through is when everything started going digital, and how you handle the pushback that we all received from our season ticket holders of, I'm not going digital. I want hard printed tickets. It took a lot of us years to finally get that adoption. And we're still dealing with it today, as most of us have a handful of clients. In collegiate sports, we have a lot of older donors that are like, I don't even have a smartphone. And so we've got to, adapt to that as well. But yeah, technology and the digital age. But I think the biggest piece of what that does is what you said, the data. Like back then, we didn't know who was showing up, who was using the tickets, who was doing anything with them. And now we have all of this data because everything is digital, and the teams and the staff that are actually using that data are the ones that are benefiting. And sometimes it's data overload. It's like we have so much data, we don't know what to do with it and how to maximize revenue based on the data points that we do have.
That was going to be my point. I think there was there was a crescendo of people talking about big data or data. I mean, I'm happy to speak American here. And not knowing what big data was and how, and that overwhelm of, we've gone from, very few points of data coming in, and they might be on, unduplicated paper cards that, aren't getting scanned in and aren't getting deduped to, we now know where they're scanning in, what concessions they're going to, when they're leaving, how long they're staying, a whole bunch of things. And then it's like, there's a bit of what are the data points that are important to us now? So how do you deal with some of that data, that data overwhelm now that you're sort of gone from, a leaky faucet where you're getting a little bit of data every now and again and going, this is really valuable, and you're analyzing this tiny cup of data, to we're now at the fire hose and it's just coming at you so fast. How are you handling that? Both it's an opportunity, but also a challenge to decide, hey, what should I focus on?
Yeah. I think the biggest piece is working with all the other departments that play a role in the data that we receive. You talk about concessions and parking, and it's not just, you can't work in the silo of I'm ticketing and I have this ticketing data. You really need to think outside the box in the sense that we have all these data points, and And what can we do? For me, it's personalization, being able to send a personalized message to a client, because we know that they come to the game early, they scan in through this gate, they go to this concession stand and order a beer and a hot dog, and now I can send that person a little thank you that says, hey, on us, here's a beer and a hot dog. But you send a beer and a hot dog to a client that you know nothing about, and they don't drink beer, and they're a vegetarian, and that falls on, like, okay, this person has no idea who I am and what. And so to be able to take the data, work with the different departments that are involved, and be able to personalize the experience, because all the people coming through our building are having different experiences. Some are coming as a group with their company. Some are coming with their child for the first, sporting event that they'll ever have. And how do you personalize those experiences? And using that data is, I think, what the key is. And I don't think enough of us use the data in that way to be able to personalize that experience that fans, all of us, are trying to, expect and demand nowadays.
So you said there at SDSU, you've got, multiple sports. I'm lucky enough to be many years ago to go to a SDSU Mountain West tournament game, and it was one of the best games I've seen. I'll date myself. Danny Granger was playing for the San Diego State University at that point, but it was still one of the top 10 basketball games I've ever seen. And just from an atmosphere, it was that game was in Las Vegas. But one of the things that you've been lucky enough to be involved in, which is always a challenge, but also a really big opportunity from a ticketing point of view, is when you're opening a new stadium. Do you want to tell us about Snapdragon Stadium and what why it was such a an attraction for you in the role?
Yeah, absolutely. So during the pandemic, that's when I transitioned over from the Utah Jazz. The Millers had sold the team to Ryan Smith at the time, and sports were not happening. But what was happening here in San Diego is they had tore down Qualcomm Stadium, and we're building a new stadium, which is now Snapdragon Stadium, on the same site as Qualcomm. Smaller, Qualcomm was huge football stadium. Chargers were gone. We didn't need a 80,000 seat stadium for what we were trying to accomplish. So it's they were building a more kind of 32 to 35,000 seat stadium, perfect for soccer, which was all part of the overall picture. We've had the San Diego Wave, and now this year, actually starting March 1st, will be our first SDFC Major League Soccer game is happening. And so we've got two Major League Soccer tenants with the Wave and San Diego FC playing here. But one of the things that drawed me to this position here in San Diego is opening this brand new stadium. When I was with the Jazz, we did a pretty huge, I think it's about $130 million renovation. And to be VP of operations at that time, and all the things that go into that, where your manifest is changing and you're getting rid of seats to put in premium and all of those things, it's a challenge, and I love a challenge. And I thought, opening a brand new football stadium would be a challenge, something that I haven't done in my career, and I wanted to be a part of. And so I came out here in early 2021. The stadium was opening up with the first football game in September of 2022. So everyone was getting back from work at home, and we were starting to come back together and get ready to open this brand new stadium. And it was just interesting to be able to be involved in that, in at least from the ticketing side, where, as seats are being put in, going through and walking the stadium and counting the seats to make sure like the manifest match. So I'm not selling a seat that's not going to exist in a building, which is always a challenge. And it's like,
it does happen. I mean, I know when the SCG opened with the new stand, and we were assisting the team from a social operations point of view because it was the first time everyone's coming for the test match day one, Australia England, a massive test, and somehow one row just got mislabeled. There was no row E in this stand, and so there was 30 people that were literally tweeting where the hell is row E, and it was just mislabeled. And so went D, F, and it's what happened there? So we had the operations of, well, we've got to move these people so they have a good experience, but it was just literally, we're opening a new stand and someone skipped a letter. And it's not something the ticketing person's not thinking they're going, what would happen? And it was just literally because maybe, like you just said there, someone didn't walk the stadium and check every row and check every seat.
Yep. And we did multiple times, and we found those things. We found we had mislabeled the row or the seats where we're supposed to go left to right 1 to 20, and it went the other way around. And so you got to go in and fix it all to make sure that everything matches. And so the details that go into pulling that off and to make sure that the 35,000 seats on your manifest match the 35,000 seats that actually got put into the stadium, and to be able to pull that off was something I wanted to be a part of and take on that challenge. And it all worked out. We're in year 3 here at the stadium. Like I said, we're starting with Major League Soccer starting finally here on March 1st. So excited for that. We did a little test run last weekend with that to make sure that all of the things, scanners and seats, and we had to add different pitch boxes and kind of made some changes to the stadium to accommodate the Major League Soccer team and make sure that all of those changes were successful. So excited to have that roll out here in about a week or so.
Well, true. Well, we will keep an eye out for it when we do publish this episode. Look forward to seeing it. Obviously you spent a long time in the world of professional sports, and now you're in the college landscape. We've obviously seen a lot of professional sports chasing that younger demographic for that and that next generation of sports fan. But you're lucky enough now to see that sports fan, daily in the SDSU student body and the fans that follow SDSU. Have you noticed changes or different behaviours that are in the college student body and the college sports fan in one, what they want from a sports entertainment offer and how they consume it a little bit differently?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference that I noticed in that transition is, for one, the donation piece. It's like every ticket has a donation piece to the purchase, which didn't exist in professional sports, so to speak. And that comes from a lot of alumni want to support the school and the student athletes. And so they want to make donations to their alma mater. And part of that is through purchasing season tickets, knowing that out of the $2,000 I spend for men's basketball season tickets, $1,000 of that is a donation to the student athletes. And so there's that support piece that they support the university. And so it's not necessarily like in professional sports, you're following like a particular athlete on the team and you're a big fan of LeBron, so you follow wherever LeBron is, in the league. Here it's like, the players come and go, the students come and go, and it's more, I'm going to support the university. And so that was probably the biggest kind of change going from professional to collegiate, trying to capitalize on the alumni and the donors of the university to help kind of support the sports aspect.
And I guess you've got, that future fan flow is effectively the student body, someone who, they might not play a sport, but they'll spend 4 quality years at SDSU. They'll be part of student life. They'll be and then, like you said, they're an SDSU fan for life, whether they're returning back to their hometown or staying in San Diego. they'll be a fan. So it sort of allows you to continually grow that fan base and sort of that data position of what does your alumni look like,
Yeah.
For the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was definitely took some getting used to the different nuances between the two, and how you, for one, sell the product, and then what our fans are actually looking for. They want to be a part of SDSU and the culture, and that's a little bit different than what I was used to.
So one of the things we have been discussing on the steering committee, I'm sure Josh, common friend, and obviously you work with Josh Barney at the Utah Jazz, who's now running Steve. One of the topics that you raised, and I'm no doubt it will be a panel discussion, or at least a discussion in the hallways at SEAT, the future of ticketing. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, right now, it seems like over the last few years, the whole digital transformation has become, the thing. And now we're coming to kind of the end of, like, now most teams are 100% digital. And so it's like, okay, what's the next thing? We all got through those tough years of that transition with our guests to go digital. What's the next step? And one of the things I've been looking at, and I try to look at what is it going to look like in 5 years. It's not, and for me, it's looking at like what Disney is doing with facial recognition and in AI, and AI is a big tech thing, and how is that going to change the ticketing in the sports and entertainment experience? And so I'm curious to see how that kind of plays out. But like Disney obviously being here in Southern California with Disneyland up the road, and now you have these season ticket holders that, they recognize when they walk in that they're a season ticket holder, and it just through facial recognition, and they don't have to then sign into their app and find their tickets. But then how does that, like we talked earlier, how does that kind of venture out from just ticketing? Concessions can now know when that person comes up to the concession stand that they're a season ticket holder through facial recognition, and now they get their 20% discount because I'm a season ticket holder. At the team store, I get certain discounts. How is that going to evolve? And I'm already using facial recognition on my app so I can get into my banking account. I don't have to put in a code anymore. I have facial recognition. So it's not just in sports. There's facial recognition is going to be out there in all aspects, to open up your app, to work on your phone, to going into a venue to see a concert. And it's kind of scary when you think about like who's following me. How do they know where I'm at and what I'm doing? And I'm now at this concession stand, and they know, hey, Bobbie, you're a season ticket holder. But it's also back to my original point of personalization. You can now use that AI facial recognition to provide a personalized experience to that individual.
I think the really important thing is where it's being used elsewhere. So, like, I think where sport has stumbled in the past, where it's tried to be on the bleeding edge of some of the new tech, whereas it doesn't need to be. It just needs to be an adopter of tech that is being used elsewhere. And the fact that people are jumping the queue at airlines with ClearCheck and pre-TSA and Clear and those kind of things, and that's like, oh, my face will get me past the line. Or I was just in San Francisco recently, and it's like, oh, you want to go into the Amex experience, pull out your card, tap your card, and you get in before the other people. And so that behavior, and like I said, Disney is the, at the top level of what that fan experience, how do you make the customer experience amazing? So they're getting used to it in other places, and we're not that far, and then you have the Amazon just walk out experience that people are doing on a regular basis. So it's not just once every now and again when I go to a stadium and it feels a bit weird, and you're like the John Travolta meme trying to figure out where I'm meant to pay. As more of that becomes the norm, then it makes sense for it to become part of the norm in the world of sports. And so then it just becomes a better utility and a better way to get around the stadium. And then the AI piece, the piece that I'm really passionate about, because again, we talked about all that data and knowing what, that's where, we just don't have the capacity to, we've got 30,000, 100,000 people in our database. How do we give them personalized offers? And that's sort of that, how do we get that AI layer in there that says, oh, Bobbie does go to the game. He does, the first stop is to go and get 2 beers and a hot dog. Well, now we know that what's the offer to him. Or it could just be that, that surprise and delight that the bartender goes, here you go, Bobbie, that one of them's on us. And it's like, oh wow. And again, it's that piece that I think is going to be super exciting to play in that space. But then also just important is in the same way we had that onboarding issues, and the only thing we can thank COVID for is it helped us get through to digital ticketing. But like even the people that still want the hard ticket and still are struggling with that, like how do we build an experience that does get those people to this space? I don't have a smartphone. I don't understand this. I don't want the stadium tracking everywhere I go. Like how do we, educate those people, help them realize it makes for a better experience? Because again, those people weren't pressing a button on their phone 10 years ago and hopping in a stranger's car. That's taken years and years of people going, oh, it's okay. So it's a very exciting time. And I mean, ticketing and the data around ticketing is the hub for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in a lot of venues, they're now cashless and people adjusting to that. And you brought up the Amazon Just Walk Out. We just converted multiple stands here to that go live with our first Major League Soccer game on March 1st. So we just made that transition. It's been a 2-year transition working with them to get that out, but that will be rolling out in our stadium here in the next 10 days. So that will be interesting to see how people adapt to that technology in the stadium as well. But yeah, it sometimes can be overwhelming and it feels like you just rip the Band-Aid off and just, you're trying to make baby steps, but also the things are changing so quickly and you want to be on that kind of cutting edge of what's next to improve that experience. And for us, one of the things with being with a university is there's all this data outside of ticketing and sports entertainment that we have from donors that are spending millions of dollars on campus and people going to the bookstore and buying merchandise but have never attended a sporting event. And how do we get that data and connect it all together and say, here's somebody who spends money on at the team store or makes a donation to women's foundation that could be a perfect women's basketball season ticket holder, and so taking data outside of our little ticketing world and combining it into a big data warehouse with it, like we use Athena Quest to be able to put all of that data to help push out more information instead of just a lot of the times we work with the data we have and not connect it to, oh, by the way, this person in your database, you might want to know that they also made a donation of $20,000 last year. Whoa, crap, that would have been nice to know, And so how do you take that data and other data points out there and to kind of be better informed?
Absolutely. I mean, they're the ideal opportunity to, not even to sell to, but just to say, have you ever been to a women's basketball game? We'd love to invite you. We really appreciate your donation. And then it just opens up a whole new world of SDSU that they can want to consume. They'll most likely go, yes, I want to become a season ticket holder. Or, I did not realize I could also donate here. It must be exciting to sort of be in that space and sort of starting to connect those dots. And like I said, get that data warehouse working like for you and starting to present those opportunities for you. Bobbie, I really do appreciate the time you've taken today. I'm looking forward to catching up with you in Nashville for SEAT. I want to get to the Sports Geek Closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Yes. So I grew up in the Bay Area, grew up in Napa, California. And when I was 7 years old. So this was dating me here. It was 1980. I was 7 years old, and I went to a Oakland A's at the Oakland Coliseum game, and it was the first or second year of Ricky Henderson.
Yep.
And the 100 stolen bases year and all of that. And that was my first sporting event, was going to the Oakland Coliseum in 1980. And I remember Ricky Henderson kind of just stood out. He was the new guy
Absolute
on the team.
Oakland legend.
Yes. Yeah. So that was that stuck with me forever.
Terrific. And you would have been a lot of different sports events in your time. Do you have a favorite food or a go-to food or a favorite food memory at a sports event?
Yeah, I would say when I think of sporting events, for some reason, outside of your hot dog and beer, it's like chicken tenders and fries. You always can find a chicken tender and fry basket, and my favorite one. And it's just a memory when I go to San Francisco Giants games at Oracle, you can smell the garlic fries. Like as soon as you get in, there's the Gilroy garlic fry stand like every 50 feet. And so you go there, you could get the garlic fries and the chicken tenders. And it's like, you got to wash your hands 10 times before you can get the garlic fry smell out of your skin.
Absolutely. I was actually chatting to a friend in San Francisco who was doing surveys of fans that were saying, hey, we want healthier food options at sports, which, we're seeing different things. But she said, they're saying that in the surveys, but that's not what's happening in the stadium. People are still getting the garlic fries. They're still getting the tenders. They're still getting the nacho cheese helmets. And so it's like, you've always got to, follow the data, but also, don't let the data deceive you in some instances. People might say, I want to be healthy, but that's when you go to a stadium, that's not what you're doing.
Exactly.
Part of your experience.
Yeah.
What's the first app you open in the morning?
I would say it's called, I think it's Thinkorswim. It's my trading and investment app. Like I just get up in the morning, see how my investments are doing. I know I'm not supposed to look every day, but it's probably the first thing I look at is my Thinkorswim trades and investments.
That's exactly. I mean, it's the same as, you shouldn't be getting on the scale every day, but it's like, hey, it doesn't change them. It's a nice way for you to check in. Is there someone that you follow that the podcast listeners should give a follow to, and why?
Somebody I've followed for years, and it really comes from the business and management and leadership. Simon Sinek. He just it's management, leadership, motivation. Wrote a couple of books that start with why. It talks about like you need to know. For a company, you need to know why you do what you do. You can't just say, we sell tickets. Why do you sell tickets? And so I like all of his podcasts and TED Talks and those sort of things. So check him out. It's got some good stuff just about just being a good leader and a good manager and those sort of things. So I enjoy him.
I think the start with why also is applicable, like you said earlier, in getting into the world of sports. There is a lot of people go, I want to get into sports. I love sports and I'm a fan. It's like, that's not really a why.
Yeah.
Like, once, it might be a reason you start. It might be a reason I think it's exciting, but it's like, you're not on the court all the time. You're not, but like once you, like you did, sort of found your why in, the ticket sales and the machinations around it and all the different ways to go about it. You're like, it just makes it easy to jump out of bed in the morning and say, hey, here's what I want to tackle. Because if you don't have that, you just become Joe Punch Clock, and it can be just as frustrating as and with the, like you said, with all the changes in sports, the resilience you require needs that strong why.
Yep, absolutely.
And then lastly, and you can answer this, personally, and then maybe what's the platforms that are actually helping you move the needle from a ticketing point of view. But what social media platform is your MVP?
I'm on TikTok. TikTok sucks me in. It's like, when I get home from work, if I just sit there and I'm like, oh, I'm going to check out TikTok. I don't post things and all of that, but I get on there. Then the next thing you know, it's like 2 hours later, and I'm like, what happened? I got sucked into something, and so TikTok is the one thing that sucks me in, and I guess it just takes me out of thinking about my day-to-day and what I got to do tomorrow, and gives me a chance to kind of just see what's going out there. And, my For You page, sometimes I get into different things that I'm looking at, travel. I love to cook. So sometimes my For You page, I'm always getting recipes and different people putting out different things. I'm like, ooh, that looks good. I'm going to save that and try that this weekend. So TikTok would probably be my go-to.
Terrific. I'm also one that falls down the TikTok cooking rabbit hole. If you haven't checked out the Tasteless Baker, he's an Aussie baker. You've got to be obviously ready for some fruity language, but he's very, very funny and pretty much just keeps teaching people how to better cook more and different types of bread. So I watch it just as much for the entertainment as the recipes. But yeah, well worth checking out.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Love it.
It doesn't matter. You don't need to check it out now. The fact that you've heard it, your phone's heard it, we've both spoken about it. It'll be in your For You feed later tonight.
Exactly.
That's the amazing thing.
Yep, for sure.
So, Bobbie, I really appreciate you taking the time. Other than catching up with you at Seat in Nashville, what's the best way for people who have listened to this podcast to reach out and say thank you and connect with you?
Yeah, obviously LinkedIn is always a good way. But yeah, love to chat with people. I'm a big proponent of mentors. Had mentors my whole career. Love to help people get into the career and bounce questions off of people. That's why I love Seat and just the networking and being able to, to talk to people about what we do and best practices and helping each other out. Like, that's what we're here for. And if you have a challenge, some of us have been through that challenge and maybe able to help work through that.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Bobbie, thank you very much for taking the time, and we'll catch you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean.
How is your team leveraging AI to better serve your fans? Set up a call with Sean to discuss how you could take advantage of this huge opportunity. To book, go to sportsgeekhq.com/AI.
Thanks again to Bobbie Walker. Please connect with him on LinkedIn and tell him you listened to the episode and tell him some of the takeaways and insights that you got. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did too. You can find the links to his LinkedIn and all things that we discussed in the show notes, sportsgeekhq.com/412 for episode 412. You can always find the show notes on the Sports Geek website. As mentioned in the interview, Bobbie and I are both on the steering committee for the digital sponsorship and ticketing track for Seat Nashville. We're really looking forward to going to Nashville June 29 to July 2. You can register at seatconference.com. Keep an eye out for partners and sponsors that do have some codes. I'd love to see you. I'd love to see you there. It's always great to connect with the best in the industry across in the tracks that we're working on, but also some very smart data and BI folk, and then a lot of people doing some cool things in the venue tech space. I hope to see you in Nashville. And speaking of conferences, I'm recording this after spending 2 days at Sport Next in Melbourne. I really enjoyed it. Some of my content highlights that hopefully will become future podcast guests, but Sanjay Gupta talking about driving growth in the Indian cricket broadcast scene when 10 years ago it was actually declining to now be an absolute powerhouse in world sport. Also enjoyed Donna Burkett-Bader from F1 sort of walking through their marketing plans and some of the marketing efforts they've got for F1 75. I'm recording this and I'm actually heading to Formula One straight after recording this. And then one of the panels one of my favorite panels was the State of Capital, looking at the investment in the world of sport, both in teams and leagues, but then also in some of the media players and how it's changing the landscape. So I have locked in some guests from those 2 days. As always, networking continues to be a primary reason that I attend conferences like Sport Next and see. It was great at Sport Next to see so many Sports Geek alumni, former people that have been on the podcast, also to see clients, past ones, current ones, and potentially future clients. And then it was also great to have a conversation about some of the stuff that we're doing in the AI space, in testing and learning and understanding the tools that have allowed us to build Sports Geek Reads, to keep up to date with everything from a world of the sports business to building, our daily Sports Geek Rapid Rundown, which you can subscribe to and get a little 2 to 3 minute update on some of the key articles and some of the key trends that are happening in the world of sport. And that's all being powered by no-code automation and different AI tools and models. So if it's something that you're interested in, please let me know. As I said, I've locked in some great guests for future episodes, but nominations are always open. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/nominate to nominate a guest, someone that is absolutely smashing it in your part of the world, or someone you're watching from afar that you want to hear and learn more from. Please nominate a guest. And as I've said previously, self-nominations are allowed. As someone that does a lot of promotion, I use the quote from my good friend Steve Sammartino: self-promotion is the best form of promotion. And I should know that. I do that every week on a podcast. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
We know you probably skip over the closing segment, but we'd really love a rating or review on your podcast platform of choice. Don't forget you can now watch interviews on the Sports Geek YouTube channel. We're here to help our podcast listeners improve. Please get in touch and see how we can collaborate. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. All Sports Geek episodes are just a click away at sportsgeekhq.com.